All right, everybody. Tonight's Fight Club historical topic is the Battle of Wagram, and we have a ongoing tournament in the Hex War game system on the Battle of Wagram from the Napoleonic Wars, obviously, as you can see by the picture here. And we've got Dr. Jim Lacey, who is the Horner Chair of War Studies at Marine Corps University, and would like to have him do an introduction to his interest in Napoleonic history and wargaming. The intent of this is to provide a historical backdrop to our tournament. So as the players are playing the game, they understand what the historical context was of this scenario, the background of the campaign, because really the key here is an opportunity to put yourself in the shoes of the historical commanders and the decisions that they were making and the challenges of terrain of the forces, the types of forces, and in this case, Napoleonic combined arms warfare and getting an appreciation of that. This is, in the end, we are a professional military education organization here. So this is about learning and putting in mind models of warfare to help decision making in the future and understanding, commandership and the art of war and a bit of the history behind combined arms in this case with Napoleon. So with that, we have Dr. Jim Lacey, and he is very passionate about uh, military history for one, and wargaming for another, and Napoleon and Napoleonic warfare. And so he's a perfect fit to present this. And the Battle of Wagram that we are playing, he is the reason that we have this game in our cloud to fight with. And he's been doing this for a long time and believes a lot in this. And so with that, Doc Lacey, I'm going to hand the mic over to you and please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me again. I'm trying to decide whether I want to tell stories or keep it fast and furious. I remember when I was in high school stumbling across the Atlas of Napoleonic warfare and being actually enamored with the battle maps. And, I was the only high school kid who probably ever looked at those maps and studied them and tried to figure out what they meant because no one had told me what the graphics on military maps what meant or what they did up at that time. And I normally would expect you would get picked on a lot for being the geek studying the Napoleonic maps, but I got away with it because I was 6'3", 240 pounds, and that helped a lot. But you know, next, I had heard that David Chandler's masterpiece had been published, and at the time, and we're talking the 1970s here, it was $70, which was a ton of money. And one day I got on a bus with a whole bunch of my friends, and they were drunk, and I was half drunk, and we were going to a party in Rockaway Beach, and some guy sat down, mid 60s, and I was reading that book. And I sat next to him, and he was sure he was going to get mugged or something. I said, "No, I'm just interested in Napoleon. I see you reading it." And he looked around at all my friends who were screaming and yelling and causing trouble. And finally, he goes, "Can you name two Napoleon marshals?" And because of the maps I was looking at, I remember saying Salt and DeVoe, probably pronounced them wrong now and then. And he just closed the book and handed it to me. I said, "I can't take that. That's a ton of money." And he goes, "I make a ton of money. Here, keep it." And I still have that copy of David Chandler's book. It's falling apart now. I've been looking at it so much over the years, but that's where it started. And I hope I remember enough of it to get you through a halfway decent briefing today. All right, so here's Western Europe, most of it in 1809, and if you remember, in 1805, Napoleon had defeated the Austrian Empire and a whole bunch of other people in the 1806 and 1807 campaigns um, to he hoped knock him out of any contention for about 10 years. And the Battle of Austerlitz, decisive defeat, probably Napoleon's greatest victory. Uh, he was riding high, and he continued to ride high. 1806 when he defeated Prussia. 1807 when he at least beat the Russians badly enough. Draw at Eylau, a uh, a a pretty good victory at Friedland, and then the Treaty of Tilsit that made Russia his ally. And Russia is still his ally in 1809, though it is starting to get itchy. And it's always looking up here in the Polish areas, Galicia, with Galicia, and causing trouble. Austria had hoped that the Prussians would come in on their side. Um, the Russians would come in on their side during this in 1809, but the Russians stayed in the alliance and actually caused the Austrians some trouble on their eastern borders. They also helped Prussia, which was crushed at Jena Austadt in not December, but in 1806, would come in and help them and actually push their army up into Bohemia uh, for quite a bit, for quite a while, to hoping for a combined operation with the Prussians. But the Prussians, though they did hint they were coming, did not come, and the Austrians moved their army back towards the Inn River in Bavaria. Uh, the French, in the meantime, with Napoleon after 1807, said, maybe I could grab Spain and invade Spain 1808. In 1809, he's bogged down in Spain. He has lost an entire court island, which, kicked off a countrywide insurrection. He's got the British in Portugal. And Austria looked at that and said, well, maybe he's overextended. Maybe we could go to war again. And they decide we're going to go, they opt for war. They wanted allies. They got none. The British gave them some money and gave them a lot of promises that they would send troops into Northern Europe to help them. They eventually did, much too late. And we're not going to talk about that, but it was a thoroughgoing disaster for them, one of the worst run operations in British military history. But in 1809, Napoleon has got large portions of his army, including some of his top commanders in Spain, and Austria declares war. He's got to grab the armies that are in the German Federation, in the Federation of the Rhine, the Confederation of the Rhine, mobilize them to stop the Austrians, bring as many troops back, or at least their leadership back from Spain as he can, and fight a war that he was not totally expecting in at the beginning of 1809, and then by May of 1809, he's in the fight. So the Austrians come down into Bavaria, and this is the area where, if you remember the 1805 campaign, they lost an army under General Mack at Ulm, which is right around here. Now they figure they've got Napoleon. Napoleon is not on the battlefield yet. The battlefield is the army that's forming with Devout, Le Breve, Ordant, Messina, and eventually Bernadotte coming from the north, wherever the heck he is. Okay, way up here, is under the command of Marshal Berthier, and that's Napoleon's chief of staff. He's been sitting at the right hand of Napoleon for years, many years. When Napoleon gave an order, it was Berthier who had to interpret it, what the emperor actually wanted, and send out all the orders to the corps commanders and any other subunit that was involved to make Napoleon's vision happen. And he was very good at interpreting the orders of the emperor. It meant nobody could probably do it better, as if he read his mind. But put in independent command, he turned out to be totally inept. It's one of those things, the Berthier conundrum. He was actually a captain during the American Revolution with Rochambeau. So he's been at war for all of his adult life, decades, and he's been sitting at the right hand of the master for close to a decade, and he seems to have actually comprehended nothing of what was going on, of the Napoleonic method. General Deveau, probably in my estimation, I think in most people's estimation, the the best marshal Napoleon has, the Iron Marshal, gets into a screaming match with him. You're doing this all wrong. You have separated the corps by too much. So he's got DeVoe's corps in that first red dot, Lebrev's corps in Ingolstadt, Don's corps in where you see it, near, south of Donauwörth, Messina's corps, uh, guarding the passes in the mountains, and Bernadotte's still way up in the north. These corps are not within marching distance of each other. There's several days march between them. If you look, the Vosges corps is hanging out on a limb. Um, I put it in Rassabon. That's where it ends up, but it starts off the campaign right about here, and he's got two Austrian corps coming down on him from the south. These are the guys that were up hoping the Prussians would come in, and all of Charles's corps marching across where they hope to pin these units in place. Lvov, Odont, Messina, and most of the force will concentrate on Deveau and crush him. Napoleon finally arrives on the scene around 17 May and 17 April and starts yelling at Berthier, "You've lost the campaign for me. These guys we're totally out of position. One of our corps will be crushed. We may have lost everything." Chastises them as only Napoleon could do. He was known to kick generals around because they can't kick back. And um, only saved by the slowness of the Austrian army. The Austrian army has been reorganized into corps, just like Napoleon has since 1805. It's been better trained. It's got pretty decent leadership, nothing on the caliber of Napoleon's marshal, at least the best of Napoleon's marshals. But it still moves very slow and ponderously with a gigantic wagon train behind each corps and then a separate army wagon train. And that slow movement gives Napoleon barely enough time to start bringing his army together, though it is a very close shave for Deveau. He's got about 200,000 troops in total, and in his reserves 190,000 plus his troops 125,000. Plus he's got an army of 85,000 in Italy, and 58,000. All in all, the Austrians have between 400,000 and 500,000 men. Uh, the army in Italy does not do much. John himself will come back up with to take over a small force that should have been at Wagram and does not get there. But this is a pretty substantial force Napoleon has to fight, and he should count himself lucky that the Russian state stayed in his alliance, and the Prussians were still so cowed from 1806, and the Kaiser is weak, his wife is strong, but she could not force him into the fight. All right. Time on this. Napoleon immediately attacks. Deveau wins a defensive battle. Napoleon attacks at Egmont, Ebensburg, Egmont, two other major fights, and uh, breaks the Austrian army. Not breaks it, defeats the Austrian army because it's not a broken force. In 1805, it probably would have collapsed under itself under the pressure of these fights. But he's given up. Napoleon, to bring his army together, has been forced to give up Ratisbon, now known as Regensburg, um, and that provides an escape route for a good portion of the Austrian army. And the rest of it marches south of the Danube River to Vienna. But the bulk of it crosses over at Ratisbon and retreats north. So we can take a look north of the Danube. So you can see that here. Now, Bernadotte has not arrived for these initial series of battles here. Uh, um, but he's marching hard. So the army crosses at Ratisbon, and you can see its escape route for one corps. Most of the corps go this way, all the way to Vienna. a small portion of the main Austrian army retreats across south of the Danube to Vienna. I think if Napoleon understood what was going on with the Austrians, I think he learned too late how much of the Austrian army had actually gotten across the Danube. Because if he had known what was happening, instead of marching on Vienna, he would have turned Bernadotte to block their route and then brought his corps into their rear and probably have destroyed the entire Austrian army in the field, the entire Austrian field army. But he never even considers the move, which means I believe he did not understand where the Austrian army had gone. So once he realizes he's got an option, cross and chase, his fast-moving army may have quartered it anywhere along here and force another battle, or march straight to Vienna and take the capital. Normally, you would expect Napoleon to go after the army because that's his maxim: destroy the enemy army, everything else falls into place. Once the Austrian army's gone, you could take Vienna at your leisure. You could take anything in Austria at your leisure. But this time he decides to follow south of the Danube and get to Vienna. Uh, he's in Vienna. Charles, the Austrian commander, has brought his army in behind Vienna. This is an actual period map. So you've got Napoleon in Vienna. This is the Danube here. This is the island of Lobau. If you will, any of you have played Wagram already, you know that's the kickoff point. And here is the Austrian army is all out here and on the plateau of Wagram. But the Marchfeld, this wide open area, is pretty much devoid of troops for a long time. The Austrians have some sort of advantage here. It's called the Marchfeld because this is where the Austrian army trains year in, year out, decade after decade. They know this territory like the back of their hand because it is their annual training ground for almost the entire Austrian army. It's except the forces in Italy. It's like their national training center, and so they're familiar with it. To Napoleon, I mean, he's been through the area before, but he doesn't have the familiarity that the Austrians have. You're looking at towards the heights of the plateau there with the island of Lebeau behind us. You're probably looking at this from Aspern-Essling area towards the heights where the Austrians are. Period drawing. All right. The problem Napoleon has is where am I going to cross the Danube? And he picks, I'll cross north, forming Lebeau Island, and then I will assault north into the Marchfield. Charles decides he's going to defend north of the Marchfield, that he will allow Napoleon to come in and take to deploy his army, or at least that is what it seems. So Napoleon has to build two bridges and to cross onto Lobau, and he's got to build more bridges to cross into the Marchfield. And to do that, he's got to take Aspern and Essling. And he does so. And we get something that looks like this. He's crossed. There's Essling. This is Aspern. He's forming up his army. He's trying to push out to the west. And then and then Charles decides, you know what? I'm going to hit him and hit him as hard as I can. This is an initial battle. Battle that comes down to us is Aspern-Essling. I'm not going to spend too much time on it so we get to Wagram. But you can see Napoleon's invasion. Napoleon's force is pretty much surrounded. What goes wrong here is the Austrians, though they have moved to corps, they're not very good at it. They don't have very good corps staffs. They're still trying to learn the Napoleonic method. Charles, though, he is an excellent commander, and he's the brother of the emperor. He doesn't attack initially. His heart may not even be in the fight. He's been trying to talk his brother into negotiating a peace, not a surrender, since Napoleon took Vienna, and his brother will not do it. So he knows he's got to fight. But their staff system is of such, and his generals and their rivalries and their dislikes for each other is such that it's very hard to coordinate it. So when Napoleon gets hit on his left flank, uh, these guys don't move. They don't start moving until almost nightfall of the first day of this fight. And by then, Napoleon's brought across reinforcements, and it's still a desperate fight for Napoleon. And they do something else that I considered pretty clever. We're in Wagram here. Sorry. Um, uh, they send ships filled with rocks, heavy ships down. There's been a serious rainfall the night before the invasion, and those ships take out Napoleon's bridges. They crash into them, break them. Napoleon gets them fixed quickly, and then they get broken again by more ships. And that eventually traps DeVoe's corps on the wrong side of the Danube, plus tons of artillery, other reinforcements and cavalry Napoleon is counting on, and he can't get any more ammunition across. So when the assaults start on the second day, Napoleon finds himself hard pressed. He finds his he finds his infantry running out of ammunition. He's minus his best corps commander with his largest corps. Messina is able to hold the line, but he has to order a pullback. And to cut back, he sends almost 6,000 cavalry into a headlong assault, stop the Austrian advance, give him pause, and pulls back towards dusk at a 7-day. Now, there's been hard fighting. Aspirin has changed hands several times during the day, as been Essling. The troops on his right flank have finally advanced, and it's an ever tightening cordon. But when they notice Napoleon's escaping, the Austrians have been so beaten up and they're so tired, Charles basically lets him escape. Napoleon retreats back across the Danube. This is his first major defeat. For the next 36 hours, he doesn't do anything. I mean, he is stunned, he's depressed, and then all of a sudden his normal energy comes back. He starts calling in more and more troops. He's lost 20,000 men plus in this fight. So he's calling in more and more troops. Come help me. Not, he's calling in his German allies. He's rebuilding his army. He's getting the engineering equipment for a much bigger effort with more permanent bridges. He does a lot of planning. So for the next almost 6 weeks, he is planning. He's turning the island of Lobau into a giant cantonment area. He's forming his entire army there. So you have the um, uh, building. He gets the first set of bridges built. They're pretty secure, and then he's got to build bridges to cross the river. Initially, in the first battle, he crossed the river on this northern section of the island, and he gives every indication of doing so again. But Charles this time says he's not going to fight him there. He's going to give up the Marchfeld. Some of his subordinate commanders are like, let him in. Let's maneuver around him. We'll beat him in an area we know he can fight. We'll make him force his way across that plateau. We'll make him hit us on these hills and slopes here, strong defensive positions, and then we'll be able to crush him on both flanks. I don't think they had any idea how big Napoleon's army had grown in the 6 weeks since Aspirin Essling, or they may have decided, hey, we're going to fight him right here. Now, he does leave some troops in contact here to fortify the cities and make, he's not going to give this position away. Between Groß-Anzendorf and Essling, and between Essling and Aspirin are fortified trenches. And they're manned enough that Napoleon is going to have some sort of problem coming through that area. Uh, he unbelievably does not fortify the ridge line or fortify his positions. He just, those are naturally strong positions, and he does. They don't go in. They don't. They don't. The Austrians do not fortify them, though they do fortify some of the key towns. I'm never going to try and pronounce that town right there, but you could all see the name. And Adraklan is semi-fortified. Um, okay, so Napoleon surprises the Austrians completely by coming in on the east side. Bridges very quickly. He's got special bridges that are pivot bridges. He puts them in the water, and the current pivots the main section of the bridge across the Danube. And within about 30 minutes, he's got uh, several bridges across the Danube, and his army starts moving. He's put 1,100 men across in boats to secure the side. Messina's corps is the first one to cross. Now, Messina is probably, in my estimation, Napoleon's second best corps commander. Uh, he's a scoundrel, though. He's always, where can I find loot? How rich can I get during, on my campaigns? But he's also independent. He's also capable of independent command. He's vicious in a fight. Um, he has a serious foot injury from when his horse fell on him. So he's riding around in a four horses drawn around in a big white coach wagon the entire battlefield. Napoleon is missing. Uh, he's had a lot of officers killed at Aspern-Essling, but his biggest loss is Marshal Lannes, who is actually his closest personal friend among the marshals, and he was even the second or third best of Napoleon's marshals, and he is not here for this battle. Uh, but Messina gets across and immediately starts spreading out and enlarging the bridgehead, flanks the positions in Aspern-Essling. There is some fighting there. The Austrians don't hold on very long. Klenau brings his corps back. He handles them pretty well. They're under pressure the entire time, but they get back into the hill range here, uh, and the cavalry stays in front to keep the French um, going too fast and too hard. The other corps come up. Bernadotte's corps, mostly Saxons. The Ninth Corps come in to take Ajaclan. Eugene's army of Italy, which is the smallest of the corps, comes in facing Wagram. Ordant Ordant come of the Second Corps takes the entire position in between, uh, along the ridge line and the stream. This stream is about waist deep, and it's heavily forested. I don't know if that's the right word. A lot of undergrowth on both sides, but it's very hard to pass through. And then though a good portion of his cavalry, of Napoleonic's cavalry, his light cavalry, not his heavy cavalry, are on the far right flank of the French line. You could see the fourth, the second, the first corps all lined up on the ridge line. The cavalry guarding the flanks. When you play the game, you'll see that in the battle. So let's go one more. And basically, you have something approaching nightfall here. It's not quite night. It's about 6 o'clock. And you're looking at Messina in the left flank. You are looking at Eugene and Bernadotte were told they were told to launch a general assault. Bernadotte does so, takes Dracula, but his Saxons are pretty well mauled in the fight, and they're not the highest quality troops anyway. Eugene gets lucky. He hits that seam with the bulk of his force and is able to turn left on Wagram. Archduke Charles has to come on himself with his reserves, moves battalions and from Hohenzollern and Liechtenstein and barely contains that gap. Usually nearly broke through. If there had been a division or two behind them, this battle could have ended on the first night, but it doesn't. Don pushes against Hohenzollern and Rosenberg and is stopped dead. Or Don gets Napoleon very mad at him. He starts the attack and said, "Oh well, it's almost nightfall. I'm going to attack that town, which I'm never going to try and pronounce. I have to cross the stream. I got to." He decides that's ridiculous. He calls off the attack very early in the evening, making Napoleon upset at him. But Napoleon forgives the Iron Marshal, and they can, and that's it. So looking at this, we go into day two. I'm putting up a what is really a second turn of an actual Wagram game. And, you can compare it to the map. Here's a Dracula. Here it is. Here's the town of Wagram. Here it is on the map. In this case, the Austrians, instead of hiding on the ridge, decide to attack. I do not have the Vosges Corps here. I'm maneuvering it for a bigger attack on the left when I did this game. I do have Messina guarding my flank. So in the game terms here, this Austrian player in what I call bold move came out. In actuality, on the morning of the second day of the battle, they tried to do this, but it didn't go as well as this fight. And I'm just showing you the map as you may have seen it already if you're already in the Wagram campaign, and the importance of Dracula and the scene between the two armies. That who holds this has a decisive advantage in the battle. If you know how this came out, I let this army go out further, and then it got crushed. Was destroyed. And then I kept it pinned, everyone else pinned in here while I went up north to kill all of those guys. But that's a hint for whoever gets to play me for the championship later on. All right, let me show you this. I don't know if I should show this map or the next map first, but this shows some of the big movements of the battle. So Napoleon on the second day gets surprised because Rosenberg's corps attacks Davos first. Charles, seeing how big the French army was, says, "Boy, I'm going to have to hit that army first, and I'm going to crush its weak left flank." And by weak left flank, let's go back one. I'm talking here. So when this attack starts on the morning of July 6th, Rosenberg attacks first. They were all supposed to attack together, but the Austrian staff didn't make allowances for, hey, half of our attacking force has to come out of these mountains and march through eight kilometers just before even to reach the French line. So Rosenberg kicks off at 4 a.m. just like he's supposed to, and they kick off at 4 o'clock, but it isn't until 6 a.m. that they're actually hitting the French line. And by that time, Rosenberg's force has been defeated. Davos was planning a major assault of his own to go off at 04:30, and he's a little surprised to see he fall under attack at 4 o'clock. Napoleon is convinced that that all that artillery fire, because it's not daylight yet, must mean John with his 13,000 troops have arrived. In the game terms, there's a 1 in 6 chance of that happening for the first 5 turns of the second day of the battle. If the game rolls a 1, they come. If not, they don't come. In real life, they don't come. His brother doesn't rush to the battlefield. So And it's a very hot day, by the way, just to mention it, in July, and the French troops are already dying of thirst on the morning of the second day. Napoleon did not get enough water across during the night to make them happy. Uh, so Napoleon wins this fight, and then it takes him about 2 more hours to reorganize his army to to start the attack he had planned. Odant holds Hollowson back. Bernadotte, can't even see him on here anymore because his Saxons have been almost annihilated. He has given up the town of Ardrakla during the night on his own volition and never told Napoleon he was doing it. And Napoleon orders, first thing in the morning, you will get that thing back. He orders Messina to attack it. And all morning, the fight is on for Dracula. It becomes uh, a charnel house of death, fire, destruction. As battalion and after battalion, regiment after regiment, brigade after brigade is fed into this fight by both sides. Um, Eventually, at the end, Napoleon has it, but just barely. The Saxon corps is broken. A lot of French battalions are broken. By noon, there's about 11 to 12,000 panic stragglers right in here. They're being rounded up by the guard to try to reform the units. But once panic strikes, it takes a little more than a few hours just to get them up. That fight is continuing when Culworth's Corps and Cleno's Corps march onto the flank, almost on scene by Napoleon. This is fog of war. Um, there's nothing here to stop them. They've left the division to guard the aspirin. They get pushed back by Clanau. The only thing that saves them is Clanau pushes all the way to Gross Arnsdorf, stupidly gets within range of the heavy guns that you can't move during the game. So he gets pounded by 30 strength points of artillery, which demoralizes his force a bit. Napoleon's got a couple of options here. He can move. He's still got Mamont's corps. He's still got the old guard. He's still got his guard cavalry. He's got a couple of other supporting divisions all in reserve. He can move them in. Um, but he doesn't want to commit them yet. He's waiting for that decisive moment to commit his reserve and his guard. So instead, because this part of the battle starts to wind down, Liechtenstein pulls away, Belgrade is watching from around this spot here. He orders Messina to pick up his entire corps and march it across the battlefield and hit Aspern-Elsland. He is blessed that Culworth, in the absence of orders, does not decide to continue on, or worse yet, turn and smash into Messina's flank while he's engaged. This entire corps basically watches Messina. They're slamming him with their artillery, but their infantry's not moving. So eventually Messina gets his whole corps and hits Clownow's exhausted and demoralized troops and throws them back. And then Messina builds a line from where you can see the laser dot to here. There's still a pretty good gap in the thing. Eugene is done back to cover the line, but there's still a pretty good gap that the Austrians never really take off. Now, it's important to also to realize that Culworth was discouraged from going forward because Napoleon did decide to send Brescias with the reserve cavalry and the cavalry of the guard to attack them while Messina was marching across. So they formed square to fight off cavalry. Bessières, who commands the guard, who leads the cavalry assault himself because the guard cavalry was slow coming up, uh, has a cannonball graze his leg and kill his horse. The horse falls on him and he's unconscious and has to be removed from the battlefield. The guard is told that he's dead. They believe he's dead, and they're brokenhearted. They really love this guy. Napoleon later said that must have been some cannonball that made my entire guard cry. Uh, but Bessières recovers and will fight another day and another day and another day. But he's out of this fight. Um, so let's go back. So now we have Messina's corps. It's done its march and turned right and got Esper and Esslin. In the game terms, if the Austrians get these cities, it's big points, 25 or 35 points each. And the importance there is if they hold them, they're sitting in the Napoleon supply lines. No ammunition's getting across. His supply dump is sitting here. They'll kill it. It's not in the game, but if they get that far, it's assumed lost. All Napoleon's ammunition is retreat route. It's critical that Napoleon keeps this entire area open, and that's why Messina marches across the battlefield. Even as he's marching, Ardant, Eugene, and the Army of Italy, which is basically a weak corps, just got a nice name, are pushing hard against these Hohenzollern and Belgrade's two corps, and a little bit of Rosenberg's flank, Rosenberg's right flank, just to pin them in place so that the Vaux can turn with 4 divisions, cross that town that I'm never going to try and pronounce, get up onto the flight, and then bring his entire corps onto the flank of the Austrian army. At one point, when Messina is just getting into action, Napoleon one of his generals comes up and tells, it doesn't look good for us, sir. This is not good. He immediately turns to his right, and you can see the smoke of the guns firing have advanced past the town. And he goes, no, he tells his commander, no, we've already won the battle. The Austrians just don't know they lost, or words to that effect. Okay, so here's the gap between Messina and where Eugene's troops laid off. Bessier's cavalry is attacked to guard Messina's move, and eventually has to pull back. They can't. The cavalry is never going to overrun unbroken infantry in squares. So Napoleon does something pretty amazing here. He orders a grand battery, and I can't get a definitive number, but I have numbers from anywhere from 82 to 126 guns in this battery, almost hubcap to hubcap, because Kulwow's corps has just started moving when Bessier's cavalry pulls back. And this is what's going to hold this entire gap. There's virtually no infantry there. You can see Messina's corps, but that just shows them en route. Thing. What they're going to hold this entire flank with just artillery fire, and it's devastating artillery fire. And he builds a corps around McDonald's by taking part of Marmont's corps, taking part of the guard, taking part of other corps, and they build a three-sided square that he hopes to break the Austrian center with. He's hoping that they'll see what's happening here. Their flank's going to be turned, and they'll send troops from the center to help out, and he'll be able to break through. If they don't send troops and this attack fails, Napoleon's fine. He's like, well, good. They didn't send the troops. I pinned them in place, and then I'll wait for Devaux to win the battle. And that's basically what happens in reality. Clanau's corps continues to pull back. Messina follows him. Kulwow's corps is not broken by the artillery, but it's demoralized, does not come forward. Liechtenstein's reserve corps smashes McDonald's approach. All the artillery from Belgrade's corps, all the artillery still in place from Kulwow's corps, all of Liechtenstein's artillery, Archduke Charles' reserve artillery are hitting this corps on the march. It's absorbing 100, maybe over 100 rounds a minute of artillery as it goes forward. It's reduced the numbers to about 20% by the time it finally says we can't hold and begins to pull back. But by that time, Devaux has his entire corps online. He is marching. Archduke Charles realizes the army is about to be flanked and defeated in detail and orders a withdrawal. Amazingly, the army does not run out. It withdraws in good formation to live and fight another day. but it's a crippled force, and Napoleon's force is so beat up that he can barely pursue. Um, so now you're looking at it. Um, the Deveau is on with overwhelming numbers. There is a seam between two corps. McDonald's is attacking. Messina is actually attacking at this point, but it's not being shown here. Marmont is getting ready to be thrown into this intersection, and this is where Charles calls it a day and starts pulling back. He's got a corps in reserve guarding his retreat route, and he's got John, who will not arrive on the battlefield in time where he could have hit this whole force in the flank or rear, and is now pulling back. And here you can just see the limited pursuit. Napoleon's forces did. They went to the edge of the ridge of the plateau, and they moved to the edge of the mountains. But well, his entire army gets away. Uh, if he did not retreat, there was a good chance of breakthrough, this flanking maneuver, um, and another breakthrough in the third, that his army would have been dismembered and in detail. Instead, Napoleon holds the battlefield. He's won a victory. The Austrian army is demoralized, and the emperor does sue for peace. And Napoleon later, so following year or the year after, I forget when, one of his diplomats and generals, one of them said, the Austrian army doesn't fight well. And Napoleon looked at him and said, my dear sir, you must not have been at Wagram. This is a brand new army that it has learned to fight Napoleonic style warfare. It has beaten him once at Aspen-Essling. It came within a hair's breadth of beating him here. Um, it does not bode well for Napoleon in the out years. And when the Austrian army comes back into the fight again in 1813, a disastrous campaign against Russia, which I'm sure Dr. Flynn, who has joined us today, is going to talk to you at length. Uh, it's a rejuvenated army, quite capable of holding its own. Maybe not against Napoleon, but it could defeat any other Napoleonic force that detaches itself, and it's capable, with Russian assistance and Prussian assistance, of winning the Battle of Leipzig much earlier, which maybe we'll save for another day. So I'm going to end it there with for questions. I'm going to tell you, if anybody wants to stay longer. At the end of questions, before I will play this. It's going to start the 1809 campaign. If any of you have not looked at epic history for the Napoleonic Wars, it is just fantastic. I'll start it just so you can get a look at what it looks like. And if anyone wants to stay, if not, I don't expect there will be people who want to stay much longer. Send me a note and I'll email or send you a link to the entire thing. But do this for just about 2 minutes. Okay, them stopping it. But it's the great graphics, very well scripted. Anybody wants to go over the battle again, look at the map, the units moving as they cross the map, and it's very well done. I will put it on play and let it play until the end, and then I'll disconnect unless uh, unless Tim doesn't want to do that. Any questions from anybody? Anything in the chat?
Yeah, Doc Lacey, you got a question in the chat from Gustav Wolf. How many troops did
And the
Napoleon lose?
Aspirin Essling cost him about 20,000 men. And um, for the Wagram assault when he crossed the river, you're talking in the dozens or hundreds. Though they one of the Austrian generals fought pretty hard, Norman, on the right flank, trying to slow the Bell down. I didn't go into that. I probably should have. His corps, which started at 12,000 men, and at the end of the first day was at 6,000. So DeVoe handled them pretty badly. DeVoe may have lost about 1,100 of his own. So Napoleon's casualties in the river crossing and expanding the bridgehead probably came to 2,000 men, if that. Uh, and and most of them were on the right flank with DeVoe. And DeVoe has the biggest and strongest corps, so he could absorb those losses. Uh, um, at the beginning of day two, Napoleon's got about 140,000 men on the battlefield, compared to about 115,000 for the Austrians. There's 28,000 more cavalry for the French, and 14,000 cavalry for the Austrians, and about 500 guns to a little over 400 guns, not counting the 129 huge guns he's on the island of Lobau. I'm sure you would all love to be able to bring those 10 ones or 10 twos from the island, but they're siege guns. Hope that helps. At the end of the day, both sides of the Battle of Wagram have lost close to 40,000 men killed or wounded. Uh, so it is a brutal fight from morning until almost nightfall.
All right, we got a question from Major Lex Lusiak from the Canadian Forces College. Go ahead, Lex.
Hey, sir. First of all, just wanted to say thank you very much for the presentation tonight. It was fantastic. Quick question for you. If someone wanted to dig in a bit deeper into Napoleonic tactics, just wondering what you would recommend in terms of reading. I'm familiar with Chandler's book, but I haven't read much more than that.
Well, Chandler's initial chapters really goes pretty deeply into the Napoleonic method in terms of how he organized the corps. So I'd probably start there. Kuhn wrote a book on Napoleon and operational warfare, which I think is better than average. It's another place to look at it. Let me invite Dr. Flynn. He does know a lot about Napoleonic warfare. If he's got a book he wants to recommend on the topic.
Just had to find my mic. I do. I mean, there's two famous guys. I just don't have them in front of me. Is there a way to circulate it afterwards?
Yeah, send it to Tim, and Tim could send it out to everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, Dr. Flynn.
I think of a couple books.
Rothenberg's book is excellent for the French too. The ones that are coming to mind.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Doc Lacey and Dr. Flynn, if you guys think of any books, you can send me those titles, and I'm happy to push it to the tournament players.
I assume Tim will take questions on wargaming.
Yeah, actually, Doc Lacey, I have a question for you. We've had some conversations about the relevance of studying the Napoleonic Wars, and nobody take my question here as me thinking it's not relevant. But Doc Lacey, I'm curious as to what your answer would be. Because I know sometimes we struggle with some of the historical time periods to capture students' interest, and that's often for a variety of reasons. Primarily, they get pretty busy writing papers and things like that. But what would you say to somebody asking you? I'm asking you, what is the relevance of studying Napoleon, or in today's modern era with the sophistication of combined arms today, which is dramatically more sophisticated, all domain warfare, for our students that we want to have them master all domain warfare? What's the value in studying Napoleon and fighting these war games?
It's always tough. It's tough for me teaching history at the War College to decide how much Napoleon or how little Napoleon. There's always that question of what are we doing trying to create the best warriors of the 19th century for? And there's something to be said for that. Eh, but if the nature of war doesn't change, only the character of war changes, then you've got to understand that if you think Clausewitz has any utility for today, and I strongly believe it does because it's theory, and there's got to be a theory of war, and if the theory is right in one era, it's got to be right in every era. Clausewitz has to pertain in ancient Rome as much as it pertains to the current day, and uh, and if you believe that, and you should, then you got to understand that everything Clausewitz is writing is predicated upon his observations, firsthand observations of the Napoleonic era. More importantly, we at PME, and I'm talking PME writ large, all of the schools everywhere, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, do an incredibly good job at teaching the business, the mechanics of war, the process of war. Told to take a corps from A to B. Nobody does it better than the United States military. If the U.S. military planned the invasion of Ukraine 2.5 years ago, it would have been a totally different story. Um, we are excellent at planning, and command and staff schools all over the United States do an excellent job of preparing their students um, for to plan major operations. Tactically, we're if a enemy regiment runs into a MAGTF, runs into a BCT, it does not have long for this world. We're tactically better than anybody. Where we fall apart is the operational level and how to think about it. Okay, so I tell Corps, hey, planning staff, I need to go from X to Y. You're great. Okay, I got it. We're on it, sir. But if I said, hey, is Y the right place to go? I normally would get blank stares. So an example I use is Arnhem, and it's a great game to play on our Hexwalk Cloud if you want to give it a try. Hey, Field Marshal Montgomery comes in and goes, hey, I need 3 courses of action for Arnhem. And hey, staff is great. We're here now. We want to go to Arnhem. We could drop all the airborne troops on Arnhem, and 30th Corps could smash up the road to them. We can sprinkle the airborne troops all along the 30th Corps route and capture all the bridges, and 30th Corps could hop, skip, and jump in. Sir, we don't need the airborne. 30th Corps has got enough power to smash up that road. Very good courses of action. But what the staff should have said is, hey, Field Marshal, don't bother with Arnhem. The more important place is to focus on opening the Scheldt estuary, getting the port of Antwerp open, and getting the army resupplied for further endeavors. Was the right operational answer. Studying a Napoleonic War does is build a context of campaigns and battles inside every commander's head, so that every operational situation he or she comes across in future years when they're 3 and 4 stars isn't brand new. You react almost instinctively in a tactical fight based on your trips out to 29 Palms, your Army, NTC, other training centers, your home station training. You just do it over and over again. So anything that hits you on a tactical battlefield is second nature. You just react to it. A surprise in an operational battlefield, and I see this in war game after war game, which you all will be exposed to as you move up in rank, just is met with, I don't know exactly what to do here. I have nothing in my mental context that will allow me to file away what's happening in front of me on this battlefield at the operational level to make my next decision. Studying Napoleon is where you begin to build that giant mental context that you don't need it to be a staff planner at a division level or below, but you absolutely need that mental context to be an effective staff planner for at corps level and above, or at least a planner who can advise his or her commander. Um, I've often said, you know, what we have the best leadership at the tactical level. We know you all are great leaders. Um, we what you don't have, you have instant pattern recognition of anything that happens on a tactical battlefield. You do not have it at the operational level. If I can marry your tactical leadership with instant pattern perception that a war gamer brings, I'm the PME is starting to create a bunch of military geniuses. Um, you, uh, Now, the question would be, why don't I just put war gamers into general positions? Because they two reasons. One, most war gamers couldn't lead a platoon out of a paper bag. Uh, and so no one would do it. They said, and the difference in wargaming and a real life operational battlefield is wargaming gives you a number. Every time you look at a unit, you know, hey, that's a 6, that's an 8. In real life, the commander's got to give it a number. I'm an Army guy, so brigade commander comes in, he's got 16 companies, and they're all 10s on day one. Then he meets Captain Lacey, goes, well, that guy's an idiot. That company's a 4 until I can get Lacey replaced. Even a company that is your best company in combat isn't your best company if they've been awake for 72 hours, if they've taken losses in key leaders. You could pull them back, give them a rest, get them one or two key leaders, and they might go back into the fight. They won't be, if they left the fight as a 5, they might come back into it as an 8, because you can't get them fully rested. You can't get those new leaders trained the way you want them. It's that is a constant thing that every commander has to do all of the time. So studying Napoleon gives you a general context for the fight. Your 20 years of combat, of training, combat, any kind of experience gives you that ability to assign numbers to all of your units in your head, which are constantly changing. And if you're good enough and hard enough about it, you have to assign a number to the enemy too. You have to be able to look at the battlefield, get the battlefield reports, and say, "Wow, that they're not hitting me as hard yet today as they were yesterday. I think they're waning. I think this is the time to move over to the counterattack." You got to give the enemy a number too, and you only do that. You're only capable of doing that if you have built up a gigantic context of operational fights in your head over the course of the next 10 years of your career. Napoleon's a good place to start, but then you got to do the same with the American Civil War, the Franco-Prussian War, in World War I, World War II, and so on, until when you actually get into a real fight, you have a library in your head so that anything that happens on the battlefield you're not dumping it into an empty vessel and trying to figure out what the hell's going on. You're dumping it into a much larger context you have built up over 1, 2, or 3 decades of your career. That got a little long, but that's where I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that answer. That was definitely hit the mark of what I was hoping the pathway you would go down. So thanks for that. That's very helpful. Okay, your comment about wargaming did spark a question in the chat from Gustav Wolf. So asking about where information like this video, it has been recorded and it's going to get posted to our Marine Corps University Wargaming Directorate webpage, and I will push that link out in an email. And then the second question is, are there materials that I have that can help you teach wargaming to your Marines and looking to create a warfighting society in your unit? I would love to be able to bring similar materials to them. So a couple comments on that, in terms of teaching wargaming to your Marines and materials. Well, first off, what's important to note about the wargaming directorate here at Marine Corps University, we've been up and running for about 3 years now. Before this, the university only did really its wargaming through the initiative of individual faculty members like Dr. Lacey, Dr. Flynn, Dr. Jensen, who basically carried the torch for wargaming on their own shoulders as they taught their curriculum because they believed in it. We have been focused on building our capability here, and I have not focused on like delivering training materials and stuff on wargaming for Marines. We're in the process of building up our faculty development program, and we'll be developing some wargaming courses as part of faculty development. And through that process, I have no doubt that we're going to be generating a bunch of different materials that will enhance wargaming. In the meantime, there's plenty of resources out there, and as I'll put some references. I want to push some emails out here to the group on some recommended readings. There's a number of them out there here that have come out. I mean, it's been a hot topic for a while, with General Berger's guidance on wargaming. There's been a bunch of stuff written and in championing the cause. In terms of the warfighting society, the biggest thing you can do to enhance wargaming is to play games and, get games and offer them up and just jump in and start playing. There's a wide range of games available. We're in a rich environment. There's more war games available today than there ever has been. And it's a very rich market out there of war games. Now, that doesn't mean that all the war games are valuable. And, you've got some that are complex, some that are easy to learn. And, so there's a number of them out there, and really depends on, are you wanting to fight tactical or higher level? And we do have some games here that we're promoting. And I think, obviously the Wargaming Cloud is a key tool. Now, I will say we have visions with our Wargaming Cloud and the games that are in them, and we're continuing to enhance them. The Company Commander modern game is one that's in the cloud, at the tactical level, that is a very good one to jump in, easy to play, good company tactics. It's got loitering munitions in it. It's a great one that tries to represent today's battlefield, and I think that there's a lot of potential there. Flashpoint Campaigns is another one. Super excited about that one because we invested in an amphibious and air assault module, modifying that game, worked with the development team on that, and we just got it this last fall, and we're about to kick off another Fight Club tournament coming up here that will be showcasing Flashpoint Campaigns. Our challenge is the number of licenses that we can get people access to in the cloud, and we're currently constrained. So it's not something we can offer to the whole, Fleet Marine Force. But on a limited basis, we're making it available as you're experiencing by jumping into this cloud. So more to follow. I'll put some stuff out on email, but bottom line is this is a continuing work in progress as we stand up and establish ourselves here at Marine Corps University in this Wargaming Directorate. We're building the plane in flight, I would say. We are not where I'd like to be in terms of all our resource and capability, but we are steadily getting there and pretty excited about what the future holds. Okay, we are getting close to time. Doc Lacey, I think what I'd like to do is, if you've got a link on this YouTube, we push that out rather than letting it play at the end, and everybody can watch it for themselves. But I do want to take, if there's a few more minutes for questions, if anybody else wants to ask anything, please fire away. We'll stand by here.
Just go to Epic. Just go to Epic History and look at the selections there. They're fantastic videos. On
Can I weigh in
YouTube.
on the history part, on the history question? Why Napoleon?
Yeah, go for it, Dr. Flynn.
Okay, so I taught a command and staff the last 13 years, West Point before that, 10 other years in civilian instruction. Okay, I'm not sure why I led with that. I got 5 points to make, but it comes up a lot at command and staff, like, what role is Napoleon? But I would agree with Jim's comment that, and I like your phrase, in the context of operational fights. But I like the Here, hang on here. Might as well look at me while I'm talking. It's in Marine Corps doctrine. It's in Napoleon shows up everywhere, just in doctrine. And of course, Boyd makes use of him. So just as we teach at command and staff, we just run into Napoleon constantly. So I have to stress that to the students. Secondly, I would say that one theme in our curriculum that is inescapable is that whoever changes least always wins the next war. And that particularly applies to the US military. So that would reinforce the idea that there's principles of wars, or there's something constant, there's something worth paying attention to that is always applicable. And so rush to technology in more modern times. But whoever, I think whoever, they don't ignore technology, they don't ignore change, but whoever changes least in our curriculum always is successful. Will that remain the case? Hard to say. Third, I don't really get pressed with this because I don't know, the students like the history that I offer, but when they say, if it's not Napoleon, then why any history? And so I would ask them, perhaps they're right. It would be better to go forward without any historical context at all. That would set them truly intellectually free, without any baggage, without any preconceptions, without any knowledge of any past fights. They truly could then think and express themselves in creative fashion, because they wouldn't be tied down by any preconceptions. None of them like that idea or want that idea. They always want some kind of context. And I think that would probably go to what Jim was hinting at. Maybe tactically we have that, but building a context of operational fights. Best military history I ever read was captured in one sentence, that people hate the unknown. So if you can ever get to a point of advantage where they don't know what's coming, that's always a definitive advantage. So in that sense, people want historical context because it makes them feel more confident going forward. Should it is another question. And last, I would say that Napoleon, this is what I'm writing on, Napoleon shows clearly that he was able to win battles, campaigns, and he could physically impose himself on people, but he couldn't get a cognitive success. He couldn't get to a place where he had he could make he makes an impression, he has a lasting impression. He can't get it to a permanent state of conquest, but I think England does. And so the elective I teach is the Napoleon Art of War. And we do Napoleon, we cover Napoleon, but it ends, which it ended Monday, it ends by me saying we really should look at England, that England has a superior art of war at this period. The focus should be taken off Napoleon, and the age of Napoleon and the fascination with Napoleon battles actually skews this history, because England does it best. And what England does is bring a cognitive advantage success to the material, to the physical, to the kinetic fight, and they just do it better. And I would further say they do it morally, and I mean right and wrong. They paint Napoleon as a tyrant, as a person with world aspirations, as someone who is, demented and deranged, all the while England's building up their empire and doing the exact things they decry. So perhaps a good IO lesson, but something, those 5 points get, as they should, get a lot of play in command and staff. And so hopefully address some of the questions about why Napoleon, and then, why history at all. Anyways, I can leave it there. Hopefully that helps.
Hey, that's great. Thanks, Dr. Flynn, for weighing in with that. Okay, time for one more question if there is one. All right.
I'm gonna put the answer to these Napoleon questions and other things at the end of the next battle talk that I send out to the students. So, and then Tim could send it out to the wargaming community after that. And there should be one of them coming towards the end of next week. Okay.
All right. Dr. Lacey, I want to thank you for doing the presentation tonight and, your talk through Wagram. It was great. I've looked at this before. We've been fighting this for a while, but that was fantastic to get refreshed on the history there. Always good to get regrounded in what we're fighting. So kind of re-inspires me on this fight, and I'm glad we're doing it. So thank you, everybody, for plugging in to this event tonight. Our next one is going to be Dr. Flynn with Barbarossa, or not Barbarossa, I'm sorry. That would be a great one to do too. But we're going to be doing Borodino, Battle for Moscow and the Napoleonic Wars, not World War II. And Dr. Flynn's going to be kicking that one off. We just got to get that one locked in the schedule. Probably sometime around last week of February or first week of March. We'll get that locked in this calendar, and I'll get the invite out here soon. So with that, I will stick around, but I'm going to end the recording. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to stand by, and good night. Thank you very much.